The door's locked. There's gotta be a key around here somewhere. The door's locked. There's gotta be a key around here somewhere.
Okay, hear me out. Point-and-click games still matter, but admittedly they're having a bit of an identity crisis. Also called simply adventure games, because sure, why not? That's like labeling all drama films as story movies. This genre was once considered the peak of computer gaming. Amidst the technical limitations of the 80s, what you see before you was viewed as a pure spectacle. Yeah. But as years passed and computers got stronger, developers started incorporating more advanced features like full movement, camera control, and first-person perspectives. Next thing you know, this became the new standard, and point-and-clicks faded into the background. When you free a genre from the very limitations that defined it in the first place, it only makes sense that it'd be reduced to a simple relic of the past. But I wouldn't say that they're dead just yet. The niche still possesses a cult following, for sure. So what is the deal with point-and-click games in the modern day? Are they simply an outdated medium only being kept alive by the nostalgia factor? Or could they be so much more? Limited movement and usually fixed perspectives allow for these games to flourish when it comes to art direction. Machinarium and honestly all Amanita games are a great example of this because I consider them first and foremost to be art pieces. Beautiful, hand-drawn settings with an emphasis on even the smallest of details. This care and attention produces such intriguing scenery that's bursting with life, which is especially impressive considering there's almost never any living things in these scenes. Any still from this game really would be right at home in an art gallery, except here you're offered an additional layer of depth through interaction. I've mentioned this before, but I own the soundtrack of this game on vinyl, and it comes with several wonderful prints taken directly from the game. I have one hung up on my wall, and looking at it always injects me with pure inspiration.
This is our lead artist, Adolf Lachmann. Very good painter, and he's so exact that the pictures he made were too exact and too perfect. So he started to draw with his left hand, even though he's right-handed. And it was perfect, it worked. So the whole Machinarium is drawn by his left hand.
What a cool little world they created here. This isn't just a case of a game having a really good art style. It's an example of a piece of art being given the opportunity to become uniquely interactive, in a way that's only really possible thanks to the point-and-click genre. I think point-and-click games sometimes get a bad rap for being too simple. Yet that alleged flaw happens to also be the genre's greatest strength. For a lot of people, point-and-clicks were their introduction to video games, and that's all thanks to the accessibility of the simplistic gameplay. I mean, it's in the name, you just point and click. Most of the time it's literally impossible to die in these games, so you can go at your own pace, explore as you wish, and think things through. They don't depend on technical ability or how much of an epic gamer you are, they instead rely on something that everyone has: their mind. A perfect adventure game will push your critical thinking and logic in a way that not many other games would attempt. I genuinely don't think there's a sensation that beats finally solving a puzzle. Not by looking up the answer or by mashing buttons, but by truly and honestly just figuring it out. What if I used this pot as a helmet? Oh my god, it worked. I don't think people give point-and-clicks enough credit as a gateway into gaming. I know I started playing I Spy long before I was able to move on to grander and more technical games. But that doesn't mean that these games are any lesser than the others. There's a beauty to their simplicity and a timelessness in the way that they act as an open invitation to any player, regardless of who you are. As a byproduct of this genre's simplistic gameplay, there's a lot more room for the creators to expand narrative elements. In order to check out some relatively new point-and-click games, I installed Unavowed. I said relatively new, okay? Wadget Eye seems to be single-handedly keeping the point-and-click niche alive these days, and honestly, I love to see it. Completing Unavowed was a really special experience to say the least. The very core of this game is in its storytelling, and it isn't afraid to dedicate most of its time to world building and fleshing out these captivating characters. It leans a bit further into the visual novel side of things, so it might be best to not go into this expecting a game per se. Instead, treat it like a miniseries. Sure, the puzzles leave a bit to be desired and the supernatural shtick can be corny at times, but in my opinion the dedication to the story more than makes up for it. It sometimes feels like an interactive TV show, where you directly influence the characters and are forced to make some morally complex decisions. Decisions that make you go, I was genuinely surprised by how hard some of these ethical dilemmas were to confront. And my god, the characters are so good. Everybody has a compelling backstory, human struggles, traumatic pasts, and most importantly, they're all really likable. I feel like in any given piece of media, there's at least one character that I really don't care for, but this was refreshing because literally every single character is chill. I like all of them. I seriously never expected to feel so much empathy for Eli, a character in Unavowed with a tragic past involving his family. I won't get too much into it to avoid spoilers, but let me just say I was fully invested in his arc, and my heart may be a bit damaged. The ability for these games to surprise me in this way is why I love them. There is an undeniable potential that lies in this genre. I understand that it's not exactly exclusive. There are standout games that offer incredibly deep stories like this, but these games are so few and far between because, simply put, they're a massive undertaking. So many smaller developers simply can't take that kind of risk because they'd be stretching themselves too thin. That's where point and clicks have the opportunity to lift up those smaller stories. By simplifying the gameplay elements, it leaves more room to expand on that core essential. An interactive story where your actions actually have consequences. Imagine the endless storytelling potential in these games that are essentially interactive novels. That potential matters. Now I want to talk about Myst. Being released in 1993, I was fully expecting it to have not aged well in the slightest. And, well, maybe the visuals have aged, but as someone who has absolutely no nostalgia for this game, I gotta say, it actually holds up surprisingly well. More than that, it felt like a breath of fresh air. I love the way it doesn't hold your hand. It's just boom, you're there on the island with no other human beings or directions in sight. Just a note left in the grass with a vague message. The rest is completely up to you to figure out. This game is challenging and sometimes unforgiving. However, not to flex or anything, but I was expecting it to be much harder. I'd always heard that this was a super difficult and confusing puzzle game taking dozens of hours for people to figure out. But somehow, by the grace of God, I managed to complete it without looking anything up. So don't let what you've heard about this game scare you away. Yes, it is challenging and does not hold your hand at all, but you have what it takes to complete it. Everything is there for you, you just have to look for it. Admittedly, there are a few puzzles that just leave you saying, really? Like this one, where I kept circling around this island for an hour and a half until I finally accidentally clicked on this very particular part of this very particular screen, which is buried off to the side and in the shadows. A spot where no normal person would click unless it was an accident. Yeah, that was kinda stupid. One of the most notoriously brutal puzzles in the game involves navigating a large rail maze where certain sounds direct you towards your destination. The problem is this correlation with the sounds is not communicated very well at all, and if you stray from the correct path, the sounds will start to mislead you into dead ends. So unless you somehow galaxy brain your way into understanding the meaning of each sound from the very beginning, you'll probably just end up solving the puzzle the way I did. The dumbass way, through brute force trial and error. This required me to pull out a piece of paper and write down my progress in order to find the answer. And yes, while in many ways this was stupid and tedious, I'm ashamed to admit there was something kind of fun about it. I mean, this definitely wasn't the way the developers intended me to complete this puzzle, but I can't deny there was a certain novelty to using a pen and paper to physically map out this godforsaken virtual maze. That is the perfect example of the type of situation that you can only find yourself in by playing a point-and-click puzzle game. Myst isn't perfect, and like with any puzzle game, sometimes these obtuse parts leave more of an impression than the clever parts. However, when the puzzles in Myst work, they really work, and you can feel immensely satisfied having completed them. I really can't think of many other games that have given me the same feeling I got from this one, recalling readings from the library to piece together clues about constellations and melodies. I felt like I was a detective getting to the bottom of this daunting mystery. There's really nothing quite like it. The other part of Myst that I find so fascinating is the vibe. That unique 90s art style that I mentioned earlier, however poorly it may have aged, has resulted in a very interesting atmosphere when experienced today. Talk about liminal spaces, am I right? No, nobody talks about liminal spaces anymore, you idiot. God, you're so cringe. God! There's a very surreal feeling to the sound design and outdated graphics that makes pretty much every room in this game feel like the quintessence of liminality. The ambience, the mind-bending puzzles, the thrill of uncovering a mystery. The absolute undertaking it must have been to make an adventure like this in the early 90s is unimaginable. And I believe it's a feat that could only be fully realized in the form of a point and click. There have been recent attempts to remake Myst with free movement around a fully rendered island, and while I haven't tried it, I feel like it wouldn't be a huge leap to say that, I mean, come on, this just isn't the same. Myst is a point and click game at its core. Don't try to make it something that it's not. You lose something when you do that. You lose what makes it special in the first place. Remember how I said this game felt like a breath of fresh air? Yeah, this game that's 30 years old and had to work around the countless limitations of its time. The fact that a game like that can still feel like a breath of fresh air 3 decades later, it makes you think. It really makes you go, So yes, by this point, I hope it's clicked. I hope it's finally clicked with you that these games matter. It's more than just a bygone era of gaming. It's a genre, and like any genre, it has something very unique and special to offer. Simple, beautiful, interactive stories like this have a place in today's gaming world. They may never be the biggest games or the most groundbreaking, but they are absolutely timeless in every sense of the word. If you're looking for a break from the massive, overwhelming open worlds of today, why not try escaping into a simple adventure game? Seriously, you'll be glad that you did. Wait, what? The key to the door was hidden behind this slightly darker pixel the whole time? Forget what I said.